Hey guys, welcome back to the Crossroads of America. This is your Shadow Nation. I'm your host, Ghostman Sean Burris. So glad to have you back. Hey, listen, since the beginning of mankind, we've looked to the skies in fascination. Throughout history, we've fought and purchased parts of lands to be able to build societies and to be prosperous. But what if I told you another frontier is already being explored? By us, one that we're told right now is out of reach. But is it? Tonight's guest says it's not, and we're there and have been for quite some times. Mars in the secret space program, tonight on your Shadow Nation.
We're going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west.
Stop this. It's a UFO.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome to studio Captain Randy Cramer from the United States Marine Corps Secret Space Program. Captain, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. How you doing, man?
Absolutely, absolutely. I was talking to you before. We're both men of style. We have our suit coats on, ready for action today.
I'm a professional. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, well, guys, I'm just getting over COVID. This is my second strand of it. So if I sound a little funky today or look a little wore out, it's been a week that I've been dealing with this. So, yeah, I'm just getting back. I tell you, it knocked me out. It knocked me out, Captain. These are these viruses like this that come out? Are these made by mankind? Or are we picking these up from somewhere else and bringing them in to test them, or what?
Well, there's about as many answers to those questions depending on which particular viral agent you're talking about. So it's not the same answer.
Right.
There are some that have come from outside.
Sure.
Morgellons disease, for instance, the first guy that ever caught Morgellons disease got it from touching a meteorite that landed in the ground. So we know that's not even from here originally, and it's a little weird. You have certainly things that we, the U.S., have engineered and given to other places, like a couple of bad diseases that have been floating around Africa for a while. You know, our scientists certainly did that. COVID is a Chinese science project for sure. Yes. Coronavirus was designed by the Chinese scientists in this case. They are looking at their own. This was really about their own problems. We're looking at a population problem. They have way too many people to deal with. They don't know what to do about it. And they were like, well, we can't justify to people that we got to get rid of all of our grandparents because people revere their grandparents over here, but we got to get rid of all the old people. So they really engineered a virus that was designed to affect older people more and to affect Asian people more. So we have seen in the demographics that senior citizens and people with different Asian genetic markers often get it worse and have higher fatality rates from it. So right. The issue was that while they were working on the vaccine, which, to be honest, their vaccine is shit.
Yeah,
so I'm not even sure what their long-term real goal plan here was supposed to be if their vaccine ended up being shit anyway. But before they had their vaccine, apparently a lab assistant really got word of what the deal was. And he was like, you're not going to kill my grandma just because, you want to save your rich buddies or whatever. He was like, fuck this crap. So he took a vial, went to the train station, smashed it on the ground, and that was his big FU to everybody. So it got out way before the Chinese could even make their vaccine. But their vaccine sucked, and their vaccine still sucked. It's one of the worst vaccines of all the vaccines in the world that they're giving people. So I'm not really sure what their long-term plan was other than to just willfully kill a bunch of their own people. And then because it went crazy, kill a bunch of the rest of the people in the world too, because they don't care. So in this particular case, it is a Chinese engineered virus, but across time and all viruses, lots of hands have played into the make a virus and give it to somebody game. So
exactly. You know what, Captain? I've done this for a long time. I was telling you, I've investigated the paranormal for over 25 years. I grew up in a haunted home. That's what got me into this field. I've seen the lights in the sky. I've experienced the ghost firsthand. And that's what put me on the path that I'm on today.
Real super. I got to interject real quick. Have you ever been to the Birdcage Theater in Tombstone, Arizona?
No, I have not. I've always wanted to go.
You got to go. We'll talk about that later, but you got to go.
That place is supposed to be one of the most haunted places in the United States.
I had a visceral experience that I've never had anywhere else. That like I was like, okay, that I'll tell you about it another time. But I'm making out goosebumps now. It is a super crazy haunted place. So
that's what introduced me. This lady, the ghost of the lady, or whatever it was that I was perceiving in the house. My parents seen it, my grandparents, my aunt and uncle, everybody that came to our house seen this woman. So I knew I wasn't crazy. So that started me on my quest. I used to read books about alligators and ghosts. That's what I would check out from the library, man. And of course, space. And I always wondered what these things were. Now, I find it interesting here recently, man. We're living in interesting times, Captain. I never thought I would hear on the House floor, the Senate floor, us talking about interdimensional travels or talking about alien biologics. Things like that, with all these people coming forward. And of course, the cynics, the skeptics are coming out. They're all over top of it. They're all over you. I've seen that. They've been all over me. Anything you got to say, there's always some. What do they say? Those that can't do what? Criticize?
Teach or criticize, they say. But as a teacher, I'll take issue with that one.
That's right.
People that can't do it become critics, right? People that wish they could be movie stars and direct movies become movie critics, right?
That's it. And absolutely. And this has always been a place for someone to come on, because I know there's an unseen world. I know there's things going on around us. I know we live in a multi-dimensional universe. So I know these things are going on. So I heard about your story, and I got to tell you, you're the first of your kind to come on. Your kind.
That's okay.
You're the first that
one of me's.
Yeah,
sure. one of my guys. Sure.
But going back to your childhood, you think about it. We're all born in the hospital, and we come into the world pretty much the same way. Some struggle, some don't, and we live our lives. But you have a wild story. And I want to go back to the very beginning.
Sure.
Our government, or United Nations together, I could be doing this. I don't know. Could you tell us about the secret space program, going back to when you were a child, how they start engineering molecularly, I guess?
We could start right there, or I could go back another couple of steps to where it all began in the first place.
Well, let's do that.
I think a lot of people miss that, and a lot of people don't understand that part. And I think if people can really digest that, then there's something to truly understand, which is this really started around World War II. So the Nazis they had an already developed program to use telepathic communication and Western esoterics to communicate with extraterrestrials, to get information, to build hardware. So they were already working on what we call an alien reproduction vehicle, one of the first, reproduced flying saucers made by human hands back in the 40s, early 40s. They were working on that really in the late 30s, like 1938, 1939. They were starting to get that information and make good schematics. And it was only going to be a matter of time before they were building prototypes. And the first prototype was called the Haboneau. It was slow, heavy. It was kind of like a floating tank. It really wasn't very fast or very maneuverable, and they couldn't make very many of them. So it wasn't good for much more than reconnaissance at the time. But that's what they had that first. And then we got our little chunk of technology after an event called the Battle of Los Angeles. Now, not to be confused with a movie called Battle Los Angeles, which is about some aliens that invade LA. That's a movie. There is an incident that occurred, I want to say, in the late January of 1941 that is referred to as the Battle of Los Angeles. And anyone who wants to go to the LA Times website, they recently had the anniversary of the event. It was published front page. They had a picture with the air raid lights pointing at the clouds in the sky. You can see the tip of this unidentified flying object, UAP, alien craft, whatever you want to call that it was. We can presume it was some kind of alien vehicle at that point, or anyway, so whatever we call them, not what you ever call them in the civilian world, but anyway, it was a spaceship sticking out of the clouds. They got a pretty good black and white picture of it. They plastered on the front page of the paper. It's one of the oldest, most well-documented cases because it caused a stir. This is World War II. We're ready for an attack. We see this thing, up in the sky, and all of a sudden we decide we have to shoot at it. And so we shot anti-arm aircraft artillery at this thing for an hour and a half, didn't do any damage to it. And then the next day picked up a piece of technology floating out in the water. So that began actually the covert military space race, as it were, the competitive part of that started in the 1940s. Okay. So I guarantee most of the people that are listening here aren't that old. So we all really need to keep in mind that this has been happening since before any of us were born. Way before that. Grandpas, and great grandpas that had to do with this, that started on this, are dead now, and it's gone a long distance. So to really grasp how could this all happen without people noticing, that's the first thing I really want to make note of, because it's been happening for a long ass time. 80 years or ish, a really long ass time. So when we put a ton of money and a ton of brains, and anybody who's seen Oppenheimer knows that when we put a bunch of mathematicians and engineers to work and a bunch of money, we make stuff. And the covert space programs have been taking the best people and the most amount of money. I just guarantee we made progress quickly. So by the time we really get around to me coming into this picture, a whole bunch of stuff's already happened. Technology's already been developed, at crazy spaces. What we've got in space traveling technology, anti-gravitic technology, time travel technology, energy field technology, genetic augmentation technology. So by the time I come into this, I'm a science project to build a better, stronger, faster, smarter shooter, blower, upper thinger, right? It's just really, it really is that basic. I'm not meant to be anything more amazing than just a really smart, really fast, really strong soldier that shoots and blows things up. And it turns out that some of us get really good at that. Some don't make it very far, because it's all science experiments. They're trying to figure out how to maximize these technologies into individuals and programs as quickly and as fast as they can, because they've known, again, for decades, that some form of event in which we are bullied or approached or encroached by an alien force, if we can't defend ourselves, this is a situation where you call Intergalactic 911 and say, we're being invaded. They'll say, we'll try to send somebody around in the next couple years. It's not like there's a fast response in the intergalactic community to come save your butt if somebody else comes kicking your door down. So you really either have to have a fully prepared military apparatus to deal with that, or you're not prepared for that, and you're screwed, and your civilization and your planet and your people are all done for, because a single event could be the end of civilization as we know it. So just to keep in mind, the people who've been managing and pushing this have been doing it as quietly as possible and with as much money and fervor and strength as possible to develop a functional apparatus that can defend ourselves as quickly as possible, so that we're not somebody's, lunch meat.
All right. So what you're saying, basically an Iron Dome type system, but for outer space.
Exactly. But for the whole planet, from everything that could be out there that could want to come here and mess our crap up.
Right.
Fuck our shit up.
Okay. Well, they, you went through the experiments. They tested you. I know you've, when I was interviewing, or when I was researching the show, I watched a couple clips of some of the other work you've done, some of the other interviews you've been on. And you said the government actually could be held accountable for child mistreatment. The way that they've taken these children, First off, what about your parents when you were born? How did they get them? Were you test tube, or I mean, how did that work?
That's a very good question. So there's an interesting way in which they enable to sort of blend things together and keep them separate at the same time. So I was engineered in a laboratory. A certain DNA from my dad, from my biological father, from my biological mother, and then some extra, alien to genetics that they wanted to, upgrade a few things with, gets mixed in, rolled back up into the little ball that your DNA is rolled up into. That was inserted back into my biological mother. I was born into my biological family. And then they do all of the training at night with some remote technology, but with, how do I say it without making people go, what? With trace amounts of time travel, so that if someone comes to pick me up in a cycle of picking up personnel to go for a training exercise at 12:45 a.m. in the morning, and I go away for 8 hours, I get returned at 1 a.m., 15 minutes after I left. So there's the gaps in time get squished and crunched together. So you can be gone for hours, days, or even weeks for a training period, and then return 15 minutes after you left. No one's going to know the difference. And you have a memory suppression involved. So even when you wake up and you're like, wow, that was a really weird dream, you just kind of, it goes away and you're just like, now I got to go eat my Captain Crunch and go to school. But this is something that we learned from extraterrestrials, that we are going to have to figure like a legal solution to, which is that if you start your soldiers when they're 18 years old, even 17 years old, it's too late. It's too late. You've started way too late in the training program, in the conditioning necessary to make them the best that they can be if you start when they're that age. If you want to do it right, you have to start when they're born. You have to start training them when they're toddlers. You have to start conditioning them when they're infants. I mean, you have to start early. You just have to. Where that creates a problem is we have some laws against that kind of thing. I definitely think that it's not okay that parents don't know what's going on here. I think to do it, excuse me, itchy nose. I think for us to do it properly, the only way to do it proper and legal, if you ask me, is you have to involve parents in the process so that you have their permission and everybody knows what's going on, so that people aren't in the dark about it. And I think that there's a way to manage and do that properly. But because they've cut corners and done whatever it's going to take to get the job done, no, a lot of people, parents and kids, have been entered into these programs without their permission or, their knowledge in many cases until way later in life.
Okay, so basically your training took place at night while you slept. So we're talking about virtual reality type.
Oh, not all necessarily. Some of it, a lot of it is literally being physically picked up by a white van out front. There's a thing, you kind of wake up and you almost sleepwalk out, into the driveway, into the white van. That was when I was very, very young, because there's some technology shifts here. So before they could really just send a ship that could get close to you, or before they really got the jump gate wormhole technology good, at some point they just send a couple of technicians through a wormhole, pick you up, take you through. It was very clean. But when I was very young, I can remember having to the sudden, wake up and, walk out to the driveway, into the white van, sit down with the other kids, and then you're driven off to a location where you picked up from a ship and taken somewhere else. So there's sort of a lengthier process in getting from point A to point B at that point, but they cut that down over time with, jump gate technology. But most often it was actually a physical going somewhere, but there's also the addition of virtual training when that's possible. But you need to train the muscles. You need to build and train the muscles while you're doing it. So most of it has to be actual physically present training.
It kind of gets me how they would even put the United States Marine Corps with it. Marine Corps, because you could be an entity within yourself. I mean, this whole, they wouldn't need to label it Navy, Air Force, Army. You know what I mean? Like now we got Space Force, which, so that was
Right.
kind of,
And the covert programs, we have the EDF, the MDF, the Mannequin Project. I mean, we have all these other programs too that sort of pool together and, create these systems that are separate from those systems as well. It's a very messed up patchwork of we have to do this and this and this and this on top of everything without a lot of thought about making it a lot of your connections clean over decades, so that they've had to create a structure that's a mess because of the covertness of it. And one of my points, and really the command staff points, why I'm their PR guy and their spokesperson, is this is a mess that actually threatens our national security. Right? We've taken an apparatus that is supposed to protect us, but because it's so covert and so confused and so behind these layers of classified programs and secrecy and security clearances, it actually makes us less safe.
Have you thought about
at some point we have to end that secrecy part, because the secrecy itself is now a threat.
Have you thought about going before Congress? Now in the day of the whistleblower, everybody's coming forward with this information.
Well, some people are, some people aren't. Some people are still getting scared away. We know from the aftermath of the SCIF hearings, which were, I want to say last month, a few weeks back or something, where you had personnel, congressional members coming out and some saying, we didn't learn nothing, and others going, no, we've moved the ball in the field. We've moved the needle a little bit. We know a little bit more, and we want to know more. We didn't get everybody to testify that we wanted to because we let some people know early, and it kind of, then someone called them and told them not to come. So there's still this back and forth, and there's still this tug of war with the DOD and the lawmakers on getting to, any kind of like real cooperative truth, which, to be honest with you, it's going to be like pulling wisdom teeth as long as the DOD wants to drag its heels. So,
Department of Defense. I was thinking more shadow government with this. I mean, we all know the puppets we see, the talking heads, don't run the show. We know there's something, and Trump's uncovered it if you didn't see that. But President Trump, with the way they've attacked him and everything's going on, whether you like him or not, the man's uncovered the media bias and the judicial system and everything. They can politically destroy you. So,
but I will take my own advisement on the structure of how things work, but I will just say that there isn't one person or one committee or one group of people that's in charge. You have divisions of control and power which overlap and sometimes cooperate and sometimes don't. And that's really the problem. So the DOD is an entity unto itself. The men and women and officers of the branches that make up the DOD and the Pentagon do indeed have control and power and authority over the things that they are supposed to have, but it's not everything. Right. There are that's why these layers of separation were created decades ago, so that a congressional subcommittee couldn't decide whether we were going to have this program in the 1950s or the 1960s. That was not going to be an option for those people. So what was done when it was done was felt that was done out of necessity. I'm not the person to argue favor or not favor of that, but we're way past that to a point where necessity is not what we're talking about anymore, of like necessity of creating a covert, military program. It's the necessity of everyone's really got to know. It's got to be in the common vernacular for people, or the secrecy unto itself is a threat. That's our position now, is that whatever may have been necessary in the 50s or the 60s, we're not trying to judge that. But now secrecy is the problem. And so getting people to come together and agree and communicate is always the problem. And so I couldn't personally tell you exactly. I mean, we know that Pentagon personnel are a certain amount in the know because they had a visitation from a giant pyramid. I mean, I don't know, it was a rhomboid or whatever it was that was floating over the Pentagon a few years back. 3 different people got pictures of it on their phones from 3 different locations. So The visual imagery that actually civilians captured of it was pretty good. So we know this actually occurred, but we know even further what occurred was that when that vehicle appeared over the Pentagon, every phone in the Pentagon rang off the hook until people picked them up and there was a recorded message playing. Lights flickered on and off, doors open and closes. It was like a poltergeist event, but it was not a poltergeist. It was the ETs going, we have complete control of your electrical systems, your communications, your security doors, your phones, your cameras, everything. So let's talk. Let's communicate, because you guys aren't doing a good job about communicating with us right now, because there are these barriers of communication. So they felt, these particular intergalactic group felt that they had to literally step onto the doorstep of the Pentagon, put their foot in the door, pound on the door and ring the ringer off the ring. And so, hey, why aren't you guys talking to us? And they're like, what do you mean? We're supposed to be talking to you? No one told us that. And like, we're no, it's because they're not telling you that we're supposed to be talking to each other. So there are these people making blocks. There are both on our side and the ET sides of people trying to breach that communication and get people to talk and do stuff about it. So we know that people are getting communicated with, people are getting more information, and that they have enough to act upon something. Here's the problem, as near as we can understand. The problem is no one seems to have the brass frickin' balls to just say what they know, to just show up and say what they know and tell the truth. No one wants to be the first guy that tips the boat. No one wants to be that person. So we're at this held up point because of all the people that are being told, okay, you need to do this and you should act on this. Now they're like, I'll do it if that guy does it first. Well, I'll do it if that guy does it first. Well, I'll do it if that guy does it first. Well, I'll do it if that guy does it first. And you've got a circle of people pointing to the next guy going, well, I'll do it if that guy does it. And I'll do it if that guy does it. But no one willing to just have the brass balls to stand up and go, all right, in my career, I might be dead by tomorrow afternoon, but all right, I'll do it.
Cosmic disclosure.
Yeah, no one's willing to be that person. So what we know of what's really happening in this discourse is a lot of discourse and a lot of disagreement over what we have to agree on and how we have to agree on it. And the people that are having that argument don't want to act or give the public more information until they feel like they've sorted that out, which we don't think that's the way to do this. We think at some point you have to just bring the population into the story. You have to. You're going to have to. Yeah. Public trust is gone. It's gone. And if we don't restore public trust, we're in deep, deep doo-doo. So at some point, we have to bring people into the story of this is what we know. This is what's been happening. Sorry, we've been a government you can't trust. We would like to be a government you can trust again. Right?
I tell you what, the day comes. Okay, let's fast forward. The day comes, you go to Mars. You're going off planet. How did you get there? What was it like?
So it was a several step journey where two technicians came into my room through a jump gate, pulled me through there to a hangar with a TR series, which is the black triangular Black Manta series craft made by Northrop Grumman, I think makes them. That vehicle went to the moon. And then from the moon, we boarded a much larger transport that was like 5 stories high and a couple of football lengths, football field lengths. And that exited from the hangar, this very, very large hangar. I'd never been in a hangar this size. It was absolutely ginormous. Left out of that hangar into lunar space, and then went through a jump gate from there into Mars space, and then came down pretty quick, landed on the tarmac there, and the whole trip took, 20 minutes.
20 minutes.
Maybe 15 or 20. I mean, it was short. It was a really quick, fast trip.
And I've heard you talk about in previous interviews that, in fact, you can breathe on Mars.
Yeah, you can. The air is pretty thin. Really depends on where you are. So I find it interesting that I've been at this for almost 12 years, I think something like that, about that. And there are things that I have said about Mars and its landscape and things about it and what exists there, that with information that is dribbled out, that NASA keeps learning about it and keeps, learning scientifically about it, has only confirmed everything that I have ever said, only confirmed. For instance, when they stopped using the red filters on the camera lenses, and you can actually see there's a blue sky on Mars now. I was the first person to say, no, the sky's freaking blue. It's a regular freaking sky. It's a blue sky. The first person to say that. And then there was just this one day when they published a rover picture and they took the filter lens off and you could see the blue sky on the front page picture. And I actually had to point out to like 20 different people, did you look at that though? Do you notice anything different? The sky's blue. They took the filter off and they were like, oh, they did. No one noticed. So it just slipped right through that for 4 decades, every picture of Mars has a red filter on it. So it looks red and red air and red sky. And then one day they're just like, nah, it's blue sky now.
Right. Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, no, we have water droplets and there's condensation, which means there might be atmosphere. And, oh, there's water underground. My favorite one was the director of NASA, who put out a statement when they ran the mass gas spectrum of the whole atmosphere of Mars. And they came back with argon, nitrogen, oxygen, CO2. And the director of NASA at the time, and this ended up on a what we call a 12B story, right? It's on section D of the paper on page 12. It's way at the back. So no one's ever read this one either, but you can look it up. And he says, based on this data, we may have to accept that Mars has a livable atmosphere right now. That was his statement. He just said it right there. He said, we may have to accept it has a livable atmosphere right now. So I will just say that everything I said 12 years ago has only been further confirmed, not contradicted by the science of what NASA has been acknowledging and admitting they now know about the red planet as well. So yes, you can breathe there. Where I was stationed was very far north. And so the air was very thin and very cold, and we had to have atmospheric suits to function outdoors. But when we landed on the tarmac, the air was cold, but I could feel the sun hit my face immediately. And I was like, oh, sun hit my face, cool air hit my other side of my face, breathe in cold air. I mean, it was like a sunny day in Colorado, to be honest with you. If you've ever been, high up in Colorado where it's thin and cold and sunny, it's like, it was kind of like that. But we were on a tarmac somewhere near the equator is about all I understand of where Ares Primus is. I don't know specifically and exactly where it is. I've never been able to find it on a picture or a map, but that's another story. I've done some research and found some other different.
That's U.S. territory, Ares Primus?
It's yes and no. It's also an independent contractor space. So it is. Here's where this gets weird, right? So the colony system that they set up is so that you have different participating nations that participate in the global program that have experimental colonies. So yeah, there's a US colony, there's a UK colony, there's a Japanese colony. Oop, did I say that? I don't know if I was supposed to say that. There's a New Schwabenländer colony. It's a Nazi colony, right? There's my understanding, there's at least 6, but there might be 8 or 10 or whatever at the moment. This is information that was kept very secretive from us. We knew very, very little about anything that was behind us territorially. We knew most of what was in front of us and a certain number of miles, clicks to the left and right. That was our box. Outside of that, that was somebody else's box, next door, and somebody else's box next door. And, we never visited the colonies. I went back and forth a few times, to MDF headquarters at Ares Primus, but I never got to walk the streets of, a civilian colony ever. That was never my privilege. So there's a certain amount that I know, certain amount that I don't know, and a certain amount that I've learned after the fact, which helps me understand a little bit better. But the reason I also won't say, I won't or can't say the specific number of operating colonies at this time is because they had a worker uprising. Most of them are slave labor. Most of the laborers there like slaves. And so there was a labor uprising like about 8 years ago. And so the worker uprising there toppled some of the governments. They reestablished different independent states. And the corporate entity that sort of manages the production and the manufacturing that's produced there was like, well, we don't care what system of government you have. We don't care if you hung your governor last week because you're tired of working for free. We just want you to meet the quota. Can you get the parts here by the 5th? And if you can say yes, we're in business. So there's a lot of gray area on how many colonies are left, who's running what, who's doing what. A lot of communications are not clear because they want independence from us. They're tired of this crap. The people who work there rose up and are like, screw you guys. We're tired of being under your colonial thumb. We want independence.
So you're saying it's like the Pilgrims to the New World, that they on Mars it's anarchy now. Basically.
No, I wouldn't say it's anarchy. I would say that it's there was a major militarized rebellion that changed the surface and political landscape of the entire situation. That's what I'm saying. So what's left is not fully known or understood at this time because they're being very secretive about what's going on and what they're doing because they want their independence. They're like, screw you. We don't want your colonial bullshit anymore. We can figure this out and do this work and we can take the profits for ourselves and, screw you guys.
So they're colonizing Mars, basically.
It's essentially colonial. What happens in colonialism? Your history of colonialism. Colonialists get sick and tired of being squashed by, the colonists get tired of squished by the colonialists and eventually rise up and pitchforks and hang people and go, we're taking our independence back. Happens every time. So should we be surprised that occurred here? Nope. I don't think we should be surprised. It happened every time. So we're seeing just history repeat itself in a new colonial situation off-world. Yep.
You would think the government would have put a fail-safe in there, a switch to, if you rebelled, you just turn it off,
Different entities have their precautions there, but let's just say that colonialists are arrogant. They presume that the power that they have is greater than it is. And because the true power always does lie in the numbers, and there's always more workers than there are managers and owners. And so at some point, if your workers and your laborers are sick and fucking tired of it and decide to rise up and kick your butt over it, they will outnumber you every time. That is historical, right? When people at the top, a few number of people at the top stomp on the masses at the bottom long enough, they rise up and poke people in the eye and they outnumber them. So at some point it's hard to keep a just complete and total control on a population when they outnumber you in mass numbers. You can for a while, in some cases they manage to do so for decades, but not forever.
Right. No, you can't suppress a people forever.
The human spirit is strong.
That's true. Let's
Very
talk
strong.
about other spirits, if they do in fact have what we know as spirits. You ran into alien life forms on Mars. It seems like there's, the way I've heard from past interviews, that it's an intergalactic party type deal on Mars, that all these different species of aliens are also doing what we've done and what the Japanese have done and Germans and everything else. What's going on with what happened the first time you seen an alien life form?
Sure. First thing I'll interject is a bit of information about species and planets. So what we've learned is that it's actually more often true than not true that a planet will have multiple advanced forms of life that live there. Okay. So not just a singular species. And this may come as a shock to some people who live here, but surprise, Same thing's true here. We're the naked monkeys and we get to live in the dirty surface world, but there are, catacombs and honeycomb areas underneath in which we have an indigenous insectoid species that's been here for longer than we have, an indigenous reptoid species that's been here longer than we have. So we are also a planet of multiple sentient evolved species ourselves. So is Mars. Mars has multiple species that are evolved, sentient, have their own, civilized understanding of science and psionics, and have their own territories. And, Mars is... So planets are alive. There's another, in case people don't know that. So Earth is alive, Mars is alive. They're sisters. Earth is the big sister, Mars is the little sister. So she has kind of this attitude. She's very tough and she's got shit to prove and she will kick your ass to show you that. So the people who live there understand that the psyche, the spirit, the consciousness of that planet is warfare. Okay. That's just what it's about. It is about warfare on that planet. That planet is about warfare. And so if you live there, you have neighbors, you war with them. Not necessarily to eliminate and annihilate them from existence, but to say, this is my territory, and I will absolutely bloody up your face and let you bloody up mine to tell you you cannot come past this line. A lot. That's most of what is happening there, is you are really just fiercely, aggressively defending territorial lines while pushing up against the territorial lines of your neighbors to demonstrate that you are not a pussy.
Yeah.
Like, we are also fierce.
You're flexing. You're flexing, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely flexing, and it's and with like real punches and real stabs and real bullets and real, taking limbs off and stuff with real fighting. So
I don't understand why the government wouldn't come forward with it. If it is, gone awry, and all of a sudden we have these soldiers colonizing Mars, and they gave the big FU to our government here on Earth, and the same for the other forces out there, why wouldn't they just come forward now and say, hey, listen, we got people up there at least, and why keep it a secret now? It's off the chain, right? It's done. Or can't they communicate with us from Mars? Is there a communication?
They can, and we know, and there's very little communication at the moment. Most of them don't want to talk to us. First of all, they were told that we were all dead. Their family and everyone here was dead. So when they found out that wasn't true, and that there were those of us still living and thriving down here and had not died in a nuclear, biological, chemical apocalypse, they were furious. So some of them have, would like to talk to their families, but they understand that they can't. They understand that, that there's major issues with trying to call your family from space and say, no, we didn't die. No, I wasn't abducted when I was 5. No, I've been living up here thinking you guys were dead. Like, because really what those people are concerned with right now is, okay, we're mad about this and we want to take control of our lives back, and we have some orders of the day to get done. So that's their priority right now, is fixing is like, you screwed us over, you lied to us. We're going to make our own space in our territory here, and we're going to make this work, and we're going to keep the manufacturing going, and we're going to make the money, stay in our coffers so that we can make these colonies thrive. And because if we don't, we're all dead. Like, that's really their realization, is they know that if they can't make their colony thrive, they're dead. They're going to starve to death. They're going to run out of water. They're going to run out of supplies. They will not last if they cannot make that colony thrive. So they could contact us, but they don't really want to because they're busy. That's the truth of that. They're busy. And their contracts with the corporate entities are also such that, let's not focus on that. They got their own thing to work out. And when they work it out and there's communication and traffic, we'll sort that out. It's coming. Let's just work on the quotas, because that's survival for them. So getting the manufacturing quotas done is survival for them. That's like for the colonists here, making sure you get your tobacco crop and that it actually comes out and you get enough plants and it pays off and you don't starve and can't pay your workers or your indentured servants or whatever. I mean, it's true survival, colonial survival.
So had they lost the teleportation, the transit, however they got to Mars?
No, I mean, again, they could, but then they're going to be crossing a line. They're going to be breaching a line that someone on this end might decide, oh, we need to arrest you now. You're one of those Mars agitators. You're one of those Mars secessionists. Oh, we have to arrest you now. No, we're not going to let you just come down and land here and say hello. No. So the authorities that be here would simply not want that to occur. That would not be in favor of their agenda.
So we already have the craft that can leave Earth's atmosphere and go to Mars.
Oh, yeah. Oh, tons. Lots of them. Lots of them.
How long does it take to get to Mars?
It depends on the vehicle. So if you're flying there, like I think the fastest vehicles can get there in days, but no one just flies anywhere. Everyone takes jump gates to, leap large distances. So with the jump gate technology, it's really, I mean, once you're in the jump gate and to come out the other end, it's seconds.
Yeah.
I mean, it's more than 10, less than 30. I'd say you kind of lose your sense of time a little bit, but it's, more than 10, less than 30 seconds, but it's short, it's fast. It's pretty fast. Well, the longer the distance of the wormhole that you're traveling, the longer it takes you to travel through the wormhole, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
The wormholes have to be longer.
I believe time is definitely parallel. It's not linear.
Yeah, correct.
So I would imagine that would be the same on Mars, right? Or any planet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, do they keep count of that? Do you, of course, you got to eat. You have to sustain yourself. So we have crops, things like that on Mars.
Oh, yeah. I talked to a guy who was a pig rancher for one of the colonies.
We have animals. Right?
Yeah. So, I mean, they're ranching meats.
Wow.
Growing crops, trying to produce their own food. Yeah.
Let's go back to talking about the layers inside Earth inhabitants. Why don't we see more of these? People have claimed to see them.
People do all the time, to be honest with you. People do all the time. They don't necessarily they don't make the connection of what they're seeing or who they're seeing or what's happening there. To say that, why don't people connect more with the people who live underground? Well, they do constantly and all the time. It's just not necessarily in a way that a modern audience would like it to be, right? Modern audiences like things to be a certain way. And if it's not the way they like it, gosh dang it, they're just going to complain and bitch about it. And so in some cases, real life isn't like how the audience wants it to be. And so sometimes they just bitch and moan about real life not being how they think it should be or ought to be. But so first of all, the technological vehicles that go in and out all the time do so through spaceport points, also through oceanic entrance points. Number of years back, someone got the underground oceanographic scan of the giant tunnel that goes under California. It's like miles wide, right? And these columns that are a quarter mile wide, holding it up. And it goes all the way into the middle of the country and then straight down, from what I understand. So you've got all these entrance and exit points, which when I lived in Sedona, Arizona, Sedona is one of these active intergalactic spaceports. And I can tell you that if you live somewhere where you're near one of these spaceports, you will see traffic all the time. The time. If I looked every day, I saw traffic every single day.
Wow.
It was like that busy. It was super busy.
Sky, huh?
Yeah, you absolutely have to. If you don't look up, you're not going to see anything. But I guarantee if you're a place where there's activity happening, look up regular, you'll see it. I was with a friend in his car when we saw one come down on fire, like giant orange flames with a 700 foot tail behind it coming down over the mountain that crashed. I was in my backyard at 2:30 in the morning when this pretty good, probably like a 35, 40 feet, nose to tail, egg-shaped, came over the rock wall on this side with a green plasma fire around it, which is an emergency signal. If you ever see a UFO or UAP with a green plasma ejection around it, that means they're having an emergency and they're coming in for an emergency landing. That's a general signal. This thing comes over the rock wall, disappear at thousands of miles an hour. I calculated like it went 1,001 like that. I've calculated the 5 miles from this end of the rock wall to this end of the rock wall. It was going somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 miles an hour. And it comes over the rock wall, disappears into this rock wall, disappears, and then pops back out 15 minutes later exactly the way it came.
So what kind of technology are they using that can penetrate,
you're not thinking about that, right? That's not a rock wall. That's a hologram. That's a hangar bay, right? That's a hologram that you can't see the big hole in the flat side of this wall that a ship just goes right through it.
The Matrix.
It's literally it's a hangar door.
Yeah. Yeah, the Matrix. So let's talk about the aliens again, because I'm very because I know, and the more and more I get into it and I read, I know, going back to the ghost stories, Captain, with the lady I seen in the house, I know what we see is reality. There's so much more. I know it.
Sure.
And I know you know it. But Jesus, how many layers of reality are we in here? I mean, who's programming this? You got to pull the plug at some point. What are we really in right now? Is it a dream within a dream, as Edgar Allan Poe said?
I don't think so. I've had my arms and legs ripped off too many times and it hurts.
Yeah.
And I've seen way too many people die to think that we're just a dream and a dream and a dream. And I've died and been into the middle of before you get to the afterlife, there's a middle spot, and back and forth there crazy amount of times. So I don't think we're in a dream within a dream. I think the world is very real in the sense that as long as we're in it, it's as real as it needs to be. The minute that I die and I'm not here anymore, I'm somewhere else that's more real than here. But that's only because I'm there, right? It's a relativity thing. If I'm there, that's more real. If I'm here, well, this is more real. So the relativity of it is one more real than the other is not the question. The answer is whichever one you're in is the most real. So we're in a reality which is incredibly real. How we impact it is incredibly real. Whether we pollute our environment or clean the air and water is real. And whether we live with dirty water and air or clean air and water is a real impact of whether we do something about it or not. Whether we have functional, stable civilization is something that we make choices to do, and that matters. That matters in our future for centuries. That's very real. If we don't do that and we let society crumble and civilization turn into Mad Max world, that's also going to be very real. So the very real consequences of the things that we do are also very, very real.
Do you think one day we're heading that way, right? Colonizing Mars, trying to get people off this planet to go to Mars. How are the inhabitants of Mars going to receive that? Once we as citizens, they say, okay, we got to get off this rock. We're going to Mars or whatever. And of course it'd be the rich, the elite class first.
I wouldn't be so sure about that. I wouldn't be so sure about if the rich people are going to get their fantasy of going to space, before anybody else gets to go to space, to be honest with you.
Really?
There are other mechanisms and institutions in place that I don't think that's nearly as likely. I think what's more than likely is that when we break through the wall of disclosure, that then the conversations will evolve into this company is starting a mining program over here and they need workers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're gonna pay you. We're not gonna trick you and enslave you and lie and kidnap you like these guys did over here. That we're not gonna talk about that. We'll pay you. We'll pay you good money. We'll pay you really good money to go over here and be a miner. And then all the other people that need to be support structure for a mining industry. You have to have people who can run restaurants and bars, and people who can run, the basically think the Old West. You're going to need mercantilists, and you're going to need a general store, and you're going to need a dentist, and you're going to need a doctor, and you're going to need all the things that a small Western town would need to deal with a bunch of miners mining precious minerals. So it's going to be like that, but in space. So, and that's just where it's going to evolve to. We're going to evolve to a point where at some point industry will just expand and people will just have options to go work off world and do those jobs.
Unfortunately, we're running out of time. I want to say one last thing. What are we seeing now in the news? This whistleblower, all this stuff, it's all pre-planned. Anybody can see it. Why now? What are we seeing? I know there's reverse engineered craft. I know there's real craft. What's going on here? Is this a hoax? We got the red flag thing. What are we doing?
So this is where it gets a little sticky for some people. So over the decades, we have engaged in these diplomatic conversations with the intergalactic authorities of the Intergalactic Senate, the intergalactic community. And those conversations include talking about disclosure dates. Our first disclosure date that we discussed with them that was supposed to be on the table was 1979. Our first disclosure date was supposed to be in 1979. And the people on our side kept saying, oh, no, we got to delay 2 more years. This is a problem. We got to delay 2 more years, 2 more years. We got to delay until we're out here. And we've got to the point over time where the people in the intergalactic community were like, you can't keep delaying forever. At some point, if you keep delaying, we will take action. So what's happening now is a fleet has been pushing its way here by force since April of last year. And we are getting to the point where the intergalactic community is going to make something happen. And we're resisting it until we don't or we can't anymore. And then they're going to land en masse and some shit's going to go down.
Control it to the end, huh? Until the
that seems to be what people are trying to do, but I can tell you from the reports I've seen, it's not going to last.
Yeah.
There's only so long that they can do it. That the force coming in is too large and
Captain, let's talk
too able to support itself.
Let's talk real quick about the University of Conscious Evolution.
What is
that? What's its purpose?
So the United States Marine Corps Special Section Psionics Manual is what our psionic specialists and personnel are taught from on how to develop our psionic abilities, which is essentially a curriculum that I've turned around into this public version of the curriculum that exists on the University of Conscious Evolution. So it's what is your mind? What is your brain? What is meditation? What is psionic development? How do you develop these skills? What are the disciplines that develop these skills? How do you get a better, stronger, more powerful psionic brain? That's what we teach. But basically a curriculum that's been extracted from the USMCss Psionics Manual. So it's science-based, engineering-based, it's fact-based, it's here's how you get it done based, not this is how you have to feel about it based, like this is how you do it and get it done.
I know you're big on meditation, things of that nature. Does that connect us more with everything meditation?
Absolutely. So what meditation really is it's the muscle building, it's the going to the gym for your mind and your brain. And it's the workout. And the more you build up the muscle power of your brain, the greater perception, understanding, ability to decode, see, and that expands. Our senses are like here, but they can be out here. So a more powerful brain means your senses, all 5 and 6 of them, actually there's 10, but don't get me started about that right now, get expanded more and more and more. So the benefit is having a better mind and a better brain that's more powerful, more aware, more grounded, more centered, and more capable of everything. That's where it starts. And then if you want to actually do the skill development, you can turn that into focused psionic abilities.
I've tried to do that for years. Meditation, quieting my mind. I talk to dead people on the spirit box. I done research on that for years, which they are talking. I don't.
Oh,
I
sure.
can't claim there's spirits, but they might be alien. I don't know. But there's human voices that use radio frequency
Yep.
to distort and make the words they want to. I mean, direct communication. I have hours.
Sure.
So
there's here where we are. There's this veil of dimensional, like, wall between the dimensional barriers, and there's just a lot going on the other side of that. A lot. We just have to accept it's not one thing or the other. It's not just like dead people or aliens or interdimensional people. It's kind of like all the things. So we just kind of have to get to a place of acceptance where we're here. There's a veil that overlaps and connects with us, and what's on the other side of that is kind of everything. Just everything.
I wonder if that's the ultimate freedom there. That's where it gets unplugged. Boom. You know, that's where it gets unplugged.
I don't know. I mean, I do my best to live a certain way and to practice a certain way and to try and help and teach others to live and practice in a way that is the greatest benefit to our psionic minds. And it works more than it doesn't work. But I can't lay some kind of claim to having a perfect life or a perfect understanding of everything, because we're all students. No matter where you are in the process, you're still a student learning, growing, and understanding.
Every time I get one piece of knowledge, I got 50 more questions. So I need to get you back on because I got 1,000 more.
Happy to.
Captain Randy Cramer, everybody, guys, founder of the University of Conscious Evolution. Captain, will you hang in the green room for 1 second?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Thank you so much for being with us today. Everybody.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, guys, thank you for bearing with me through the COVID show. We had Captain Randy on. What an amazing speaker. What an amazing journey that the man's been on. But you do hear the music, so you know what time that means. It's time to close out the show. Anyway, okay, guys, it's that time again. Be sure to follow us on all our social media for updated guest information and prizes. Please like and subscribe to the Shadow Nation podcast page on YouTube. That helps out quite a bit. And remember, keep your eyes open, because what you see is not always there. Thanks, guys, for joining us this week on the Shadow Nation. I'll catch you next week, same time, same place. We'll go change in America. You know I won't, but I love you. Good night, everybody.
We're going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west.
Stop this. A UFO.